All right, Jets fans, we're back again for another edition of Jets FM on the OFN for this Wednesday, what is it, the 18th
18th,
of December 2019. And
last time I checked.
we are counting the days now. It's already we're getting used to counting the days for the NFL draft in December. That's pretty bad. Actually, in November. So that's pretty bad, but it is what it is. And we're not going to be Debbie Downers. That's what you've been accustomed to on this program. If anything, we're going to try to lift your spirits as best as we can. Le'Veon Bell will face his former team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, in a game. And you know what? If the Bills don't clinch this week a playoff spot or a division title, I mean, are the Bills in the playoffs? Bills are in the playoffs. So if
Bills
they
are.
don't
They
clinch
clinched on Sunday with their win.
so if they can clinch a division title next week with a win, at least that'll give us something to play for in the next 2 weeks. But this is really more than likely the last real important game the Jets will face this season, with the Steelers fighting for a playoff spot.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, critical, especially Pittsburgh losing to Buffalo last Sunday night. I wouldn't say it was a fun game to watch, though. Close game, at least one that kept your interest to the end of the game based upon the way that it kind of transpired. I've kind of wondered about the Pittsburgh play calling. They seemed to run the ball fairly well early on and then went completely away from the run. But give Buffalo credit. Their defensive line played a good game. One of the things we've talked about a couple times at least is the moves that Buffalo made in the last 2 years is a bit of a model necessarily for what New York has to get done. Improving their offensive line, focusing on it on the draft and in free agency, getting the right guys. Clearly something that you and I have talked a lot about that's required to help upgrade the team in terms of moving forward and trying to get better for down the road. And give Buffalo credit, as you said. I don't see New England losing to Miami next week. So New England wins this week. We would I don't know if we would necessarily check the box already, but I'd be highly doubtful that New England loses to Miami. So Buffalo, while they may be quote unquote playing for
Which
something,
they will.
I think in the back, which they will, but I think in the back of their minds they're going to view it as New England is most likely going to beat Miami, but I don't think that necessarily will impact how they play the game. So it'll be nice to see, or interesting to see is probably the better way to refer to it. Darnold versus Allen, right? We took, those were two guys who were selected same year, two different kind of quarterbacks, different kind of skill sets, different teams around them. But clearly, as you and I both know, the comparison between the two quarterbacks, similar to what the Darnold-Daniel Jones comparison that'll take place in New York, and the Darnold's, Saquon Barkley comparisons based upon their draft positions has taken place in New York. Is one of those things that's going to play out over several years. And granted, each of them have different teams around them, and Buffalo is a much more well-rounded team around them and utilizes Allen's skill set, his ability to run the ball. And he's I wouldn't say he's a great passer, but he's clearly a better passer than I think people thought he was when he may have first come out. So it'd be nice to kind of see the comparison and have a place to level set where the rebuild that we have going on again for the Jets as compared to what the Bills have done over the last couple of seasons. And we're moving on from making the playoffs a couple of years ago, starting with a new quarterback and then moving back and ending up in the playoffs again this season.
Well, I think the Bills model is important for several reasons. One of the reasons I think it's important is because if you take a look at especially in what I believe will happen this offseason, and the confidence I have that Joe Douglas is going to improve upon the talent that is already here when healthy. So let's just keep that in mind. Again, there's a very 18 players now on IR for the Jets. So we're going to be even better thanks to Joe Douglas this offseason. So I feel real confident when the season begins in 2020. On paper, we're going to be just as good as Buffalo. That's how confident I am, because I don't think Buffalo on paper is all that much better than us even right now when we started week one. It's just that we had all the injuries, and we also were playing catch-up management-wise, coaching-wise. Yeah, they've been a little bit more in their structure for a few years. I think that's one thing people just forget to talk about. Another thing that they forget to talk about, and I get why they forget when they're talking negatively about Adam Gase, because they just don't care. They just have an opinion and they don't want to hear it. It's almost like politics. You're a Republican, you're a Democrat, and I don't want to hear the other side. I don't want to hear the excuses. I already know he's no good. So they don't care about that stuff. But it is a point, is that Adam Gase is a new head coach. So next year, that's not an excuse. General manager comes in, puts a stamp on the team, and I think where I'm also very confident is that I feel we do have the better quarterback. Now, whether that better quarterback talent can become the quarterback that we believe he can be, that's a different story. But talent-wise, there's just no question that Darnold is a more talented player than Josh Allen. And just look at Allen, the way he was throwing the ball in this game against the Steelers. And I've watched him throw the ball like this all year. He's had a couple of decent games, but he is just erratic still throwing the football. Is he at a point where, because they're winning, and I think the defense is making him, and maybe the structure itself is making him look better than he is? Sure, but that's the way you're supposed to. That's the way it's supposed to work out for a first and second year quarterback. You're not supposed to have those guys lead just yet. So I think the Bills are doing it the right way. So that's why I think if the Jets can follow that, I think we're in a good position because we have a quarterback that's more talented that can get us even farther faster.
I think time will tell on that one. I do think Darnold is a talented quarterback. I do think the Bills have utilized Allen's skill sets well in terms of the offensive structure. They have Gore, they have Singletary. They're able to run the ball fairly well. The offensive line, as we talked about, is much improved. Allen hasn't been great, but I do, while we may think Darnold is a better passer, we haven't seen that at all times either, especially over the last several weeks as well. So,
well, he was drafted where he was for a reason. Because he's a more talented player, but again, that doesn't mean he's going to be a better quarterback.
Wow. So, and again, as we've seen, and I'll refer you to C. Williams Leonard in terms of guys who are supposedly quote unquote talented.
Yeah, but you're not arguing with me, because I said he's more talented, but that doesn't mean he's going to be better.
Right.
So that's the whole idea. That's why I feel good about the fact that we've got the more talented guy. Now it's Adam Gase's job to get the best and the most out of him.
And again, it all depends on if you believe in the rhetoric that's been going around, but I think you've probably seen it as well, where you look at some of the guys who have left Miami and Gase and had success elsewhere, and a lot of it has been put upon Gase's quote-unquote inability to develop them to maximize their talent. So that's another one of those rhetorics and narratives that are out there again, which is played out in the media a lot. And hard to argue completely that it may not be 100% the case, right? So
who would they be?
Well, Devontae Parker is one for an example right there, right? Tannehill's had pretty good success ever since moving on from Gase in Miami.
Right. So when you're molding a quarterback for several years, who by the way can never stay healthy, and then he starts to show something on a better team, by the way. Because if Ryan Tannehill was still with the Dolphins, do you think anybody would be going, oh, wow, look at Ryan Tannehill? Of course they wouldn't.
What about?
Because the Dolphins stink.
Okay. What about Parker?
Well, I mean, Parker's had a good couple of months, and I'm supposed to put him in the Hall of Fame now.
Wait, hold on. I never said Hall of Fame. I said to you, here is the rhetoric that's going around.
Yeah, that's my answer. All right, that's my answer to the rhetoric.
My follow-up statement was going to be, next year is a critical year for both Darnold and Gase.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure for which one it's more of, because Darnold's going to be looking pretty soon for that big contract, right? And you need to have success with your quarterback when he is being paid relatively cheap dollars by comparison before you have to expend a lot of capital on him. So next year, hopefully fully healthy and a better team around him than I will use the term crosshairs to a certain, not meaning it directly that way, but meaning that the focus is most certainly going to be on Darnold, as you said, taking the talent that he has and maximizing the talent and leading the team to wins, which we saw at least in the middle of the season, but not so much the last couple of weeks. And you and I both discussed last week before the game what we expected to a certain extent out of it. And I think what we ended up getting is not too far afield from what we thought might end up happening.
How many wins did the Jets have last year?
I don't even. What do we have? 2, 3? I don't remember anymore.
Either. Well, that's why I was asking. What was that?
I don't remember. I mean, it doesn't matter.
I just want to make a point. It was less than 5, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes. I'm not.
No, not for you.
I'm
I'm making a point for anybody out there listening. Here's the point for you, Adam Gase bashers. There's 2 games left. Maybe the Jets lose them. I mean, they're playing 2 teams that are better than them, so they're supposed to lose them. But let's say the Jets win at least one of the 2, and I don't care what the Bills do, if the game means nothing or not. Nobody cares about that crap. If the Jets end up with 6 wins, whatever, let's just say they do, 2 or 3 more wins than they did last year. You do it with 18 guys on IR. You do it when you're completely changing everything, new coaching staff and all of that. You're starting quarterbacks out for several games. You're playing with a third stringer and all of that. And yet you're able to get the team to whatever, 2 or 3 more wins than the previous year. I mean, come on. You see what I mean? This is what I'm talking about. I mean, it's like I get a kick like every week. It's like when the Cowboys stink for a month and then they win a game, and then everybody talks about how could Dak Prescott not make the Pro Bowl? Dak Prescott's, he's so good. And, the Cowboys this and the Cowboys that. And the Cowboys are so good after they win like 1 game in 5 weeks. And it's the same thing. It's just, my head hurts because you got to deal with it all the time nowadays. You lose a couple of games and everything stinks, and you win a couple and everything's supposed to be great. It's like the Ravens got 12 Pro Bowlers. Is that not the biggest joke in the world? You take Lamar Jackson off of that football team because he basically is the only thing that makes that team go, the gimmicky way that they run that offense. Take him out of that offense. What, they got 2 wins, 3 wins? So how do you get 12 Pro Bowlers?
You can call it gimmicky when you win 12 games.
I don't care how I say it. The fact is it just shows you how ridiculous it is that they have 12 Pro Bowlers. Where if you take Lamar Jackson off the field, if you think he's great, fine. Take him off the field, the great Lamar Jackson, they don't win more than 2 or 3 games.
I'll ask it to you this way. Would you not like to have Lamar Jackson as your quarterback?
Right now over Sam Darnold? No.
Okay. I don't agree with you.
All right, because Lamar Jackson is not going to last more than another couple of years.
We'll see how long he lasts.
We will see. This will be something that we will see. I have to – I don't know if the NFL is going to continue down this road, this college kind of way. Maybe it will. I mean, the NBA sure seems like it. Everything now in the NBA, they're going to play defense. Maybe it will change. In 10 or 15 years, Lamar Jackson will be able to be untouched mostly by officiating, and he'll get away with running around all over the place. And that's the new wave of the NFL. I need to see that. To be proven that that's really how the direction this league is going to go.
Well, we had it years ago to a certain extent, right? You had Cordell Stewart, who was a similar type of quarterback, and Stewart was.
Yeah, but they all lasted a couple of years. That was my point.
Let me make. That's what I was trying to make. Give me a second. So Cordell Stewart was one, and as you said, he didn't last long. Now, whether or not, I don't know if it was injuries or ineffectiveness that caused him to flame out, but he clearly didn't necessarily retain the position of starting quarterback in Pittsburgh for that long. Then also, if you look back even just, 5 years ago, maybe Robert Griffin, right, the year he had it, and he got hurt, similar type thing, right, but style of play is a little different now than it was years ago.
Vic was the biggest example, but Vic was a better passer than Lamar Jackson, though. That's the idea. Lamar Jackson has got, in my mind, Lamar Jackson has got to become a better passer, or else I just don't think this is going to last.
Well, the other guy you can compare him to a certain extent, but I think Jackson was probably faster running-wise was probably Kaepernick to a certain extent, right? Because Kaepernick used the run-pass option when San Francisco, and he also was also. We won't go into the reasons why that didn't last.
Yeah, he was the backup of a guy named Garrett. What was it? Is it Garrett Gilbert? Was that what his name? I don't even remember his name now. That crappy bust first stringer that he became the back of. Because let's keep that in mind. People forget Colin Kaepernick was not the starter when he was benched. I mean, when he was let go, he was benched for a crappy bust of a quarterback. So, all right, but they never last. That's why do you really think Lamar Jackson can continue to be like this for the next 5 or 6 years if he doesn't improve as a passer?
Based on what we've seen historically, I will say no. However, as you said, the rule changes that have been enacted over the last couple of years, especially in the frequency of what they continue to protect the quarterbacks to a certain extent, makes it a bit more likely that he could end up remaining in the role, though he does have to get better as a passer, though. I don't think he's as bad of a passer as you're making him out to be. I don't.
Well, I mean, but I'm only making him out.
He's benefited from the 2 tight end set that they use. He's benefited from Ingram as the running back.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
And the offensive line ahead. But again, you can argue that. But again, you can argue that there's a lot of quarterbacks that have benefited from the scheme around him.
Makes the Jets wide receivers look like Pro Bowlers. I mean.
Yeah, well, look what they did to the Jets. So kind of hard to say he's lousy.
Did I say he was a lousy player?
Okay, you said he's not a good passer.
That's right. and there's nothing there. Look, he was not a good passer in college. He's not a good passer here. He's just so dynamic as an athlete. We've never seen anything like him. He's more athletic and a better athlete than Mako Vick was. That's why he's having success. But look at Patrick Mahomes. Everybody he's the greatest player ever, Patrick Mahomes. Put him in the Hall of Fame, everybody said last year. All right, well, he's kind of average this year. He's okay.
More average than expected, but he also hasn't been helped by the guys around him. Right? You lost Tyreek Hill for several weeks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You lost McCoy hasn't been the same.
You
lost Williams.
See what happens when talent around you isn't there? That's a good thing.
Again,
that's the point.
There are certain quarterbacks like the guy in New England who kind of helps make the talent.
Yeah, we're not going to compare anybody to Tom Brady and Bill Belichick.
But this year he's having his own difficulties around him.
Well, he's 42 years old. So
the run ends.
It's
for
going
everybody.
to end.
Nobody beats Father Time.
As I have said repeatedly, because once again, it's about being positive. It's better that the Jets have not wasted any of hopefully what will be the best 10 years of Sam Darnold's career while the Patriots were still a dominating football team. So hopefully this is the end soon. It will be. Next year or two, it'll be all over. And then hopefully Darnold, which will be in his fourth or fifth year, will be ready, and this organization will be ready. And we can only hope, because we could bash Gase all we want, but we also don't know anything about Joe Douglas other than sort of like what we've heard. Everybody said so many glowing things about Adam Gase. Well, a lot of people have said a lot of glowing things about Joe Douglas. All right, let's hope that he does a really good job. That's all we can do, and if it works out, it works out. Here's a question: what happens if the Jets fire Adam Gase for whatever reason? Who's our head coach? Who's out there that would make any of these disgruntled, phony fans? What would make them happy outside of Lincoln Riley?
I don't know. I don't know what would make them happy. But the interesting part that was an article, and you've quoted the Post a couple times, was there was a good article earlier in this week about late round or free agent fines that the Jets made this year that could have an impact on their roster moving forward. And that kind of aligns with the number of players that are out. Right, with every injury comes opportunity, as most coaches like to tell you. And you look at guys like Vincent Smith, who's had a couple of moments. You look at guys like Hewitt and Burgess, who's had some moments.
Sure.
You look at the offensive tackle that McCagnon got from the Ravens, who's ended up becoming a starter this year, who could remain as a starter. You look at Coleman, who stepped into a role. So there are guys that have made the most of that opportunity, although I think you and I would both prefer that opportunity hadn't necessarily arisen, especially in regards to certain guys.
Yeah,
right?
Just 1 year.
So, but again, the NFL is notorious that you need the depth to succeed. I think wasn't it when the Packers won the Super Bowl, they had a ton of guys out with injury. And through sheer force of will and Aaron Rodgers basically stepping up, he ended up leading them to the Super Bowl. So it happens every year. It's a matter of you hopefully have the depth around you, or B, that your injuries don't take place in critical positions, and you're able to supplement because you have those studs on the field with the guys around them, and you can hopefully protect them to a certain extent. This year, as we've seen on the offensive line and the defensive line and in the linebacker crew, the injuries we've had has played a huge role based upon losing major key personnel, which we replaced, but maybe not ably replaced, but guys you look at that should be part of your 53 moving forward.
Yeah, and you hope also that another reason why injuries is such a bummer is, I'm sorry what anybody says, but it's just the truth. And this is management understands this, which is it's very hard to evaluate certain components of your organization, including the coach, when you have so many injuries. So it's so important they stay healthy next year. It's so important so we do get to find out whether or not we have the right coach. Do we have the right foundation? Is the quarterback ready? These are all these types of questions that have to be answered next season. Yeah, this is okay for 1 year. And I'm glad that you said something that is taking the positive way, because that's good. That's what we should be looking at this season as. The funny thing is if let's just say they win these next two games, which they're probably not going to do, but let's just say they did, and they went 7-9. I bet you if we started the season and then just like did a fast forward to the end of the season, and we looked and saw the Jets ended with a 7-9 record, I bet you most fans would be like, okay, I guess that's an improvement. I mean, not totally happy, but okay, it's an improvement. But very well, I mean, dude, most fans thought we were going to be 7-9 or 8-8 this year. There weren't fans saying that we were going to go to the playoffs.
But right, obviously, if you take the 30,000-foot view and say, well, we're at week 1 in September and look at the end of December and here's our record. Yeah, but then as you and I both know, part of that is the ups and downs associated with the season, right? The keys week 1 we talked about already. Losing Mosley clearly didn't help because of the lead we had then, and not having a true kicker cost them the win. You look at the Cincy game where there was a game they just should probably never have lost, and they did. And then you look at the first Miami game where they got blown out, right? So that's 3 games right there where you look up and you go, okay, we may end up 5-11, we may end up 7-9, but you look at the games along the route that you clearly should mark off as games that you expect to win, or ones where you're leading late into the third quarter and just collapse, and all of that ends up what gets coaches fired and fan bases have their ire turned up and people don't show up to games because of things like that happen.
Okay. Again, the point is that most fans thought the team would be 7-9 at best. If they finish 7-9, then it just, again, goes to show you that it's all about the way that you handle wins and especially losses during the season nowadays. You got to stop freaking out. I mean, you hear people talking about fans. I know they had all these injuries. I know that everybody was out in the Ravens game. And I know they kind of hung around and played better than I thought they would. But still, I mean, I wanted them to be better. I wanted them to play better. I'm upset that they weren't better. I mean, it's like they can't kind of rationalize. Like it's like they kind of can, but they can't. It's like they understand it, but they don't want to kind of give in to the rational understanding of the situation. That's why I keep saying I understand why most fans are upset, and they can blame Gase or whoever they were, Le'Veon Bell doing this or whatever, all they want. But it really, they're just looking for someone to blame. They're just upset because they really are upset that it's been all of these years. It's all of the years before this that is really built-in frustration. And who you take it out on? The new guys. So that's why I think there are enough rational fans that get that and understand that it's been a wasted season. Remember in the beginning of the year when once we lost the backup and we had to go to Falk? I mean, we weren't coming on the air talking about we weren't sugarcoating anything. It was like, hey, you know what? Season's over. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, unless Sam Darnold gets back real fast and they could win quickly in a game that maybe he comes back for that Eagle game or something, and he never came back quick enough. And so we kind of understood the whole situation. But I think there's just a lot of fans, for whatever the reason is, that just don't want to understand it, and they're just really upset, and they got to take it out on somebody.
Well, that's the joy of being a fan in New York, I guess. And part of it is the disappointment from week to week when your team doesn't win, and especially when expectations get raised. Week 1, you have all the high expectations, and then you blow a lead, and then you have a 3-game win streak, and you and I talked about maybe going into the Ravens game at 6-7 and coming in on a high, and then basically laying an egg completely. So it's just the nature of being a fan, and you're a fan. The likelihood of more times than not is you're not a rational fan. Hopefully you can segment and segregate between realism and fiction, right? And you can hopefully say, well, you know what, I was hoping this would happen, but I also can balance it on what my expectations were. And it's hard necessarily to do that based upon being a fan, especially when you're emotionally invested in a team and you get up and you get expected a high. And in the NFL, as we've talked about a couple of times, in baseball, you lose 2 or 3 games. Okay, it's a 2 or 3 game losing streak. In the NFL, based upon the schedule, it's akin to having a 10-game losing streak in baseball, because one game in the NFL matters so much as it comes to making the playoffs, winning division, making the playoffs, having a good season. Every week is that kind of an impact on your overall campaign.
Yeah, and I understand it more than most fans who have at least. I mean, it took a couple months ago for me to finally have my first professional sports team championship. So I know what it's like to be worrying about, oh, well, I guess we'll get him next year. Maybe it's because it has been built in me all these years that I'm a little bit more understanding of the situation of, well, I'm used to it. And it's just being a realist and understanding. But I ain't happy. It's so annoying that we did build up everything and it was all taken away from us. One day when we turned on and looked at our phones or looked on the internet and saw something come across the screen that said Sam Darnold had mono. That's how quickly it went away. And of course Mosley's injury, which came out of nowhere after the monster game he had week 1 and a 16-0 lead, and it all went away real fast.
Yeah,
and it's
very
and
quickly.
Trust me, man, I was angry. I'm angry just like everybody else is. But you got to be a realist sometimes and understand who to blame. And right now, you don't blame the guys that just got there. So we'll see how things go over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll get into the off season. I'll start talking more and more, as I promised, about players to keep an eye on. Especially, I've already seen a couple of pass rushers that I like that will be there for the Jets after the first round, maybe even late first, second round, that I think could be guys to keep an eye on. So we'll talk about things like that real soon. Jamal Adams, congratulate him for making the Pro Bowl. By the way, is he going to play this week?
I haven't seen definitively, but it seemed to be a decent possibility he could suit up this week.
And who was the other guy that was banged up that was possibly going to play this week? It was Adams, and who else? There was another guy. Forget who.
I'm drawing a blank right now.
Yeah, forget who the other guy was. But anyway, fact is that Le'Veon Bell goes up against his former team. That'll be interesting. I'm not going to – look, there's probably going to be an ugly game because the Steelers have a very good defense. So, but I as banged up as the Jets are, I'm not going to be happy if Devlin Hodges passes for, 250 and 2 touchdowns. I will be very unhappy with that. I think we have a chance to win this football game. We have a great defensive coordinator, and we have an inexperienced quarterback. So I think we got a shot.
I think considering what we saw to Hodges on Sunday and what we've seen to him to date. First of all, kudos to Mike Tomlin and the offense coordinator for even keeping Pittsburgh in there, especially with James Conner out, right?
Absolutely.
But even what we saw, I mean, my view is you're going to see a healthy dose of James Conner on Sunday if he's healthy, and a sprinkling of Hodges. If it's the inverse, the Jets will be very happy that that's the direction Pittsburgh went in terms of offensively.
All right. And also kudos to Basham for the block punt. He's another one of those unheralded players that you mentioned before that is looking like he'll be somebody that'll be around next year, be a part of the team. And when we talked about Burgess and Hewitt last week, I don't want to disparage Burgess by putting them together anymore. Burgess has proven to me that he's a keeper on this team for sure next year, and he's still in the prime of his career. Hewitt, he's a backup guy you can count on to do a few things, if you need him in a spot start here or there. But I think Burgess might be a real key contributor for us next year, and I'm happy to see that, just like a few of the other guys we've talked about, that he might have found a full-time home.
Hopefully.
All right, Jan, so enjoy the game on Sunday. We'll do one more of these in the regular season. And then when it's all over, before we go on an extended break before free agency kicks in, we'll talk a little bit about some of those players to keep an eye on for the draft. So
Sounds good.
Thanks a lot as always, Jan. Talk to you next time.
Take care.